Hey there, my name's Brashler, and in this video, I wanted to talk about preparing for some Christmas services this year or a larger production where you need to have your choir mics going through a mix bus so that you can have a little bit more control of them. Now, there are some very big benefits of putting your choir mics through a mix bus, and I'm going to show you that today. Now, if you're brand new to my channel, I'm all about helping you feel more confident with your production gear no matter where you're starting from. Also, if you haven't checked out my website at drewbrashler.com, I have some audio tips and tricks on there with my blog, as well as some courses and downloads for the Behringer X32, the X-Air, and the Wing. So go check that out at drewbrashler.com, and there's a whole bunch of stuff there for you. But let's go actually dive in and see how we get this mic routing into a mix bus and what are the benefits of doing that. Now, for every Christmas service or Easter service or big production that you're adding in for your church or venue, there is bound to be extra things that you have going on. Now, with these larger productions, it's a lot easier to control maybe one fader or two faders rather than, say, 4 to 6 faders with these choir mics. So in a very basic setup, we would have, say, 4 choir mics. For a slightly larger choir, 4 is pretty typical. And so we have these 4 choir mics, and you push them up, and all of a sudden they start feeding back. Well, that's very common for choir mics. Now, to counter that feedback, then we would go into our effects section and we would cut out the frequencies that are feeding back. And the way to do that is to take the choir mic, turn it up until it starts feeding back, and then we would look at our EQ, find an EQ band that's around it, say maybe it's at 4K. I would then narrow up the Q, and then I would cut that out with a little piece of EQ. Now, one downside is the channels only have 4 bands of EQ. So with that, it's not super helpful with countering some of the feedback issues that choir mics have. And so one benefit is by taking your choir mics into a mix bus. Then that mix bus has 6 bands of EQ. And so if we pull up our bus masters and I go and select my mix bus 11, we can see that there are 6 bands of EQ on this mix bus. And we can get to that by pressing high, or if we press both of these buttons, then we get to number 5. There's number 4, 3, 2, and 1. And so by taking our channels into a mix bus and then sending that to the left-right bus or our recording or whatever, then we can get up to 10 bands of EQ for adjusting some of these feedback issues. Now, the other benefit of sending all of those choir mics into a mix bus is then we could go apply, say, a graphic EQ if we wanted to have more adjustability. Now, the downside of using a graphic EQ is the bandwidth of each knob on our graphic EQ is going to be a wider bandwidth than using the mix bus EQ with a very narrow bandwidth cut. So just keep that in mind, that sometimes if you're using the graphic EQ, they are going to be a slightly wider bandwidth because they are a 3rd octave interval. And with that 3rd octave interval, it's going to be applying a little bit of cut or boost on the frequencies around just that one fader. So just keep that in mind. But with sending our choir mics into our mix bus, there's obviously a lot of benefits. Another benefit is that we have a single fader for adjusting the volume for that set of choir mics. So let's actually get this set up. So with my choir mics, I have them on 29 through 32, and these are going to be stereo, which means that if I am using a mix bus for the choir, I need to have that set up as stereo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my bus masters and find a set of mix buses that I want to use. In this case, I have my mix bus 11 and 12 that are free in this case. So I will go and select my mix bus 11, and I will press View in the Configuration and Preamp section, and I can just press Link. And then I want to confirm this. Now, the next step that I want to do is I want to set this up as either a post fader or a subgroup. Now, the benefit of subgroup is that all we have to do is unmute the channel to get it going through our mix bus 11 and 12, or our choir bus. If we set this to post fader, we do have the benefit of adjusting the amount of volume going to this bus. So you can decide if you want to do the easy method with the subgroup or having the volume adjustment. Now, let me show you the volume adjustment version first. So we will set this to post fader. We will press assign, and that will set all of these channel configurations for this pair of mix buses to post fader. Now, one thing I do need to mention is that the pairs of mix buses are always linked as far as the channel sends configuration. So, for instance, if I have mix bus 9 and I set this to subgroup, 10 is also going to be set to subgroup. But if I select mix bus 10 and set that to subgroup, that does not mean that 11 is going to be set to subgroup. So just keep that in mind, that it pairs the 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, 9 and 10, 11 and 12, 13 and 14, 15 and 16. Basically, the odd with the even, it pairs them together with both a link, if we want to make them stereo, or with our channel sends configuration. Keep that in mind. Okay, so first off, post fader. So if I was wanting to set this up as post fader, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my mix bus 11 and turn it up. And let's give this a little title first. So here we go, name and icon, and I'm going to edit this, and we will go ahead and title this choir. There it is. So there's choir, and we can go to mix bus 12, and we can also set that to choir. And there it is in the suggest list. There we go. So I have my choir and my choir. Now, what I want to do next is I want to take this set of mix buses and I want to send it to the stereo bus. That way, any channels that I'm sending to this will go to the stereo bus. This is very important. So we can see that I have my mix bus 11 and 12. Now remember, this is set up as a post fader send still. So what I need to do next is I want to go find my channels here. And then on the right-hand side of the board, I'm going to find my mix bus 11 and 12, select it, and then press sends on fader. And at this point, all I have to do is turn these up to 0. At this point, my channels are going to my bus 11 and 12, and then those are being sent to the left-right bus. And so we can verify this by taking our choir microphone and tapping on it or having someone talk into it. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. And as we can see, we have volume from my channel going through to my mix bus 11 and 12. And if I take this down, we still have this channel. Now, why is that? That's because we still have this channel going through to our left-right bus. So if we're wanting to do this subgroup method or this post-fader subgroup method, we still need to remove those channels from the stereo left-right bus. So select your channel and make sure we get out of sends on fader. Select your channel and just pull it out of the stereo bus. And the next choir mic, the next choir mic, the next choir mic. So at this point, if I talk into this microphone, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, we can see that I have volume in my choir microphone. And it's going through to my choir bus. And then as I turn this up, we'll start hearing it. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. And it is now working. Now, the other method is obviously that subgroup method. So let's go ahead and set that up. So I'm going to press select on my bus 11 and 12, and I'm going to change this to subgroup. And now this is in the configuration section, and we'll go and select subgroup, and I'll press confirm. And at this point, what I need to do is I need to go and press sends on fader. Now it shows a mute button instead of our fader adjustments. Now, we can put fader adjustments, but it's not actually going to do anything. But what we need to do is we need to just unmute our choir microphones. And then at this point, these microphones are being sent to this bus 11 and 12 as a subgroup, and this works just like that. Now, one large benefit of the subgroup method is that if we do any channel panning, it will automatically adjust that channel panning into our subgroup. So for instance, if I take this microphone and I pan it to the left, check 1, 2, it is now pushed all the way to the left-hand side. If I had these subgroups set up as post-fader sends, then what would happen is that I would have the ability of panning this actually inside of my sends here. So I would have to go press view on the send section, and I would have to go over to my mix bus and just like that. And then at this point, then I could pan this to the right or to the, my fader's sticky. There we go, all the way to the left. So this is one benefit of doing the subgroup, but if you want that extra flexibility of having the ability of adjusting specific volume for each of those mics to our set of mix buses, you absolutely can with the post fader method, but I prefer setting it to the subgroup. So going back over here, config, set it as subgroup, and then we'll go to sense on fader with our mix buses selected. We can unmute those choir microphones, and it's going through check 1, 2 to this, and then I have the ability of panning this with the actual channel fader of the pan. Now at this point, not only do I have the 4 bands of EQ set of this channel, but I also have 6 bands of fully parametric EQ of the mix bus. And so at this point, I can go change all of these to PEQ, which is going to be a tighter bell curve, and then I can pull out more frequencies with feedback. And so to set all of these to PEQ, what I'd want to do is I'd want to go and select my low band, and I would set this mode to PEQ, and then I would go all the way to high band and set this to PEQ as well. And then again, with any feedback reduction, we want to make sure that we are doing a narrow bandwidth adjustment. So that's going to be a Q of 10 is the narrowest adjustment that we can make. So if I go to any of my channels of EQ, I can set this to a bandwidth of 10, and that is going to be our narrowest adjustment of EQ that we can make. Now, if I was wanting to have, say, the graphic EQ on this channel, then all I have to do is go into my effects section, go to home, and then go to one of my insert effects racks. So for instance, effects 5, and I can either pull up my stereo graphic EQ or the stereo true EQ. Now the true EQ is going to apply a curve that looks like the way these faders are inside of here. So if I set all of my adjustments here to say that, it's going to actually apply an EQ curve that looks like this. If I do the graphic EQ and I set it to this, it's actually going to make some very large divots in the actual EQ path. Now, I do have a blog post on my blog over at drewbrashler.com, and I'll make sure to link that down in the description below to show you what that actually looks like. It's very interesting, the difference between those two. But with this being said, if I wanted to insert this on my choir bus, all I would do is pull up my FX5 and then go to my insert, and I would go and find my bus 11, select that, and then my bus 12, select that, and then I would just press insert, and that would insert that on both my choir channels here, and then I have that effect inserted on this choir bus. Now, another big benefit of sending all of these microphones to my choir bus is that I can apply a global compression. So say I have some individual compression on these microphones, I can then go to my choir bus, and I can go and pull up some compression here on the entire choir mix. Now, one thing to note is anytime you are applying compression and adding makeup gain, you are, in essence, turning up those channels. Thus, if we apply compression, we are reducing our gain before feedback, which is the amount of volume that we can get out of a microphone before it starts feeding back. So if you apply a ton of compression and turn it up, and all of a sudden the choir microphones are feeding back, maybe dial back that compression to less compression, and then you will be able to get a little bit more volume out of those choir mics before they start feeding back. So that's one little tip. Now, my very last tip for setting up something like this is apply a DCA to this mix bus, and that way you can just use your DCA for muting and unmuting those choir mics. So for instance, if I go to my DCAs here and I press and hold this, what I can do is I can now select channels to be part of this DCA. And then if I go and press mute, it will actually mute those channels, or if I have the fader down at -infinity, those channels won't go through to any of your mix buses because they are set to post fader. And in our case right now, this is set to subgroup. So I can see that I have volume here, and we can't hear anything because my DCA is turned down, and all of a sudden when I turn this back up to 0, we can hear that. Now, my suggestion is to either set this to the channels or set it to the choir subgroup, but not both. I wouldn't suggest that, because if you then apply a volume adjustment down and we have both the channels and the mix bus selected in our DCA, it's actually going to double up the amount of adjustment for volume. So if you set this to -3, then it's going to be applying -3 to both the channels as well as the mix bus, thus making it a -6 dB. So that would be bad. So my suggestion is to either press select and select the channels, or go to your mix buses and select your 2 mix buses here. And at this point, if I press mute, it'll flash that, but it will not flash the choir microphones. So if you're doing this, my suggestion is to have your DCA controlling the channels and not the mix bus. And that way we can have a single fader for unmuting the choir microphones. And remember, these are all stereo, but we have them all on one fader with this DCA. Now, remember, with DCAs, they are not a summing path. So we can't take our choir microphones and sum them into a DCA and apply that same effect with our graphic EQ, because the DCA is just a remote control to the faders that are assigned to it. So just keep that in mind, that this is just a remote control for the faders that are assigned to it, but if we actually want to have summing, where it's taking multiple microphones and making it 1 or 2 channels, then that's what we have to reach for the mix buses for. Now, I hope this video is helpful for you with preparing for Christmas or Easter or a large service where you have multiple microphones that are being added last minute. This is a huge, helpful thing to have. So as you are approaching the holidays, maybe look through your mix buses and delete any that you aren't using. Maybe you had a mix bus set for a bass IEM that hasn't been used in 8 months and that you won't be planning on using for your holiday season. Then just remove it and make it clear. That way it will give you a little bit of extra room inside of your board to prepare for the extra large things that are coming for you and your team this Christmas season. I hope this video is helpful for you. If you do happen to have any questions, or there's a video that you're hoping that I would make, please post that in the comment section down below, as I'm always reading through those comments to find videos that are going to be helpful for you. If you haven't already, make sure to check out that website at drewbrashler.com. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day.